X and things like that. It was sort of a pretty good sketch.
Great. All right, we're live here.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. Just give it a second here. We're excited to kick off our B2B e-commerce trends discussion. Just give it one moment.
I was trying to get Steve to share his favorite SNL skit before we got too far in.
I think George Washington at the moment is taking it.
Okay, all right. Did you see that one?
The Nate, I forget his last name, but he is a very funny guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. Yeah, we'll measure everything in inches and feet except when we're playing football, which we'll use yards.
Perfect. Yeah, well, we're getting started here. Just want to note on the chat there, please jump in. Tell us where you guys are from. Tell us where you're logging in from today. And we're ready to kick this off. So yeah, again, thank you, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself here. I'm Steve Morganti with OrderEase. We are a B2B2C order management and integration platform. And so I've been lucky enough to be in this e-commerce and integration space for the last 15 years, working with many e-commerce merchants on their e-commerce strategies, their EDI strategies, ERP integrations. So it's been great over those years, and happy to be joined by Jordan here today. So Jordan, I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, name is Jordan Brennan, president and co-founder at Coalition Technologies. Kind of similar to Steve, we've been in the e-com space for a long time. That's sort of my origin story, which is canon by now. My brother and I had started doing e-commerce and e-commerce marketing back in the very early 2000s. We actually, our first store was a B2B e-commerce store focused on specialty products for trucking fleets. And this is back before e-commerce was much of a thing, and e-commerce marketing wasn't much of a thing, and B2B e-commerce was sort of the furthest thing from reality for a lot of companies. And so this is near and dear and very familiar for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Jordan. And so, yes, we'll be talking about B2B e-commerce trends and some of the top tools we're seeing today. So, yeah, let's get right into it with a question to you, Jordan. So help us understand, what are you hearing from your customers? What would you agree that B2B buyers today are feeling a bit frustrated with clunky manual buying processes?
Yeah, I think in our pre-call we talked about this a little bit, and I think there is sort of a leap forward, I think, in terms of B2B expectations for e-commerce. And I think the underlying technology to support that increase in expectations is actually sort of beginning to be realized. Most B2B merchants that we're talking to tried e-commerce in the 2010s. And found it very disappointing, very frustrating. Some of them really committed to significant custom developments to make it work, and may have benefited from that. But a lot of them ultimately lived with that frustration and are a bit jaded. And so I think maybe the encouragement today with all those new expectations that are sort of coming back around again, and the pressure to, again, jump back in on e-commerce more meaningfully, I think the technology is really finally catching up. And really is allowing for a more meaningful B2B e-commerce experience.
Great. Yes, definitely. Customers, expect that fast, seamless experience. One-click orders, their real-time tracking, 24/7 access to this information, and they're bringing those expectations into their daily life, right, into their jobs. So, we talk about that Amazonification of B2B. Everybody wants that simple journey. But is B2B, it's not just a bigger shopping cart, right? What makes it so much more complex?
Yeah, I think if you think about just sort of the basic user journey in e-commerce, it's some sort of marketing top of funnel. It gets someone to your site, to your content. Get them to have some sort of search or filtering type experience. You're trying to get them to narrow down what they're looking for to a particular product. Add that to the cart. There's sometimes some friction around that for a consumer. Then you move into checkout, and then after checkout, there's user accounts and updates and all those sorts of things. That's pretty straightforward and pretty simple for most e-commerce merchants to offer, most e-commerce tech stacks to offer. But if the people listening today who are working in B2B, there is a lot more to it, right? Your catalogs tend to be bigger. They tend to have more content complexity attached to them. So you're running with technical specifications on top of the marketing material itself. You are maybe displaying different content or sharing different content with different personas inside of different organizations. So you might have a customer rather than just a single email address associated customer, but a corporate customer who has 10 different users. Each of those users has different permissions and different focus areas. So your catalog, which is already complex, now has this display complexity, pricing complexity, availability of product, quantities, actual checkout, payment terms and conditions. All of these things are nuanced for B2B merchants. And one of the things that I'm always a little surprised by is for a lot of B2B merchants, they sort of think that they're the norm and that every other B2B merchant works like them. And the reality is that very few do. And so every time we onboard to a new B2B project, there's a lot of new discovery that happens. And we find that these organizations have sort of developed their own way of doing B2B. So there's a need to be able to adapt the e-commerce tech stack and experience to reflect sort of those nuances.
Perfect. So what you're saying, I mean, given all that complexity, these custom pricing, the approvals, the longer sales cycles, I'm agreeing with you here. You think it's fair to say B2B needs a very different strategy than a B2C business when it comes to that digital transformation?
I think it's really healthy to take some cues from what's happening in B2C because that's where behaviors are being taught, right? In the olden days of B2B, and again, this is sort of personal background, buyers, sellers, outside sales reps, inside sales, customer service teams, retail counters. You had sort of specific ways of doing things that were very segmented for that moment. You had a buyer who their job was to buy. They showed up at work and then they had been trained a specific way of buying by someone who was a buyer before them. And it was their way. Now today, because e-commerce is more of a shared experience and it's not as exclusive to sort of the B2B space, we see sort of this spot where the edges get fuzzy with B2C. And so I think there is this sort of need to be mindful of, hey, this is what's happening within our experience. We have to be B2B oriented, but we also have to consider what are the spaces where B2C is influencing our buyer expectations and maybe are costing us business because we're not acclimating well to them.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, imagine doing all that. You're managing multiple channels, partner networks, all these customer expectations. Now, without a modern tech stack, what happens? When these systems can't talk to each other, or you lose visibility into how orders are flowing across, the supply chain.
Yeah, I think you see your e-commerce get to low adoption. So the first space where you really should see a win from a B2B e-commerce tech stack that is solid should be with existing customers and existing internal personnel. We know we've built a winning e-commerce store when we see the sales reps using it frequently as part of their interactions with their customers. When we see the in-office folks doing the same, they need to pull something up and look something up. They're happy to do that inside of the e-commerce store because it has all of the information they need. It's displayed in an intuitive way, maybe a more intuitive way than whatever your ERP solution is, whatever your catalogs are. And so that's usually the first thing we're looking for, just to say like, hey, this is a win. We want to see existing customers and in-house personnel starting to use that e-commerce storefront to essentially replace or supplement some of what they're doing already. It just means that it's been well built. If you're getting poor adoption, that's again a red flag. You haven't sort of solved the right needs, and you're not addressing sort of the most common use cases. If it's working well with again sort of on the tech stack, not only are you going to see sort of internal adoption and external kind of existing customer adoption go up, you should see a lot more self-service activity. Again, so existing customers starting to do things on their own, perhaps without the need of a sales rep supporting them or hand-holding them or sort of acting as the final mile for them. And then also, hopefully, we see some new customer acquisition happening as well. People who are running that old Google search, or today's language, maybe checking in Chat GPT, and finding your product, finding your company, starting to interact, create an account, apply for terms, doing all of those sorts of things. A right tech stack is going to enable you to acquire those new customers.
Great. No, that's great. Thank you. Let's look at some statistics here. So a number of things jumping out on the page here, but if with 83% of B2B buyers preferring to place orders digitally, and then B2B marketplace sales doubling in 2023, how are traditional distributors adapting their sales channels to meet this type of shift?
Yeah, I think first is there's a big emphasis on data cleanup. Again, I think this is one of the things that we had talked about previously, and this is pretty relevant with OrderEase. It's solving something for us as a service provider who's building these stores and marketing them. But I think that data cleanup and consolidation and data transformation is a really massive part of how B2B merchants are coming online, if you will. If every single one of your catalogs has a different format, if it has different structures to the data, if it's not consolidated, if it's not reliably updated, if it's not set up to handle, again, those in-house or internal sort of inquiries, and also customer-centric inquiries. And again, customers can be an existing customer in a particular customer group or a particular buyer persona, or a new customer. There's just different data requirements for each of those. If you're not able to consolidate that data, if it's not clean, if it's not maintained, you're going to really struggle. And so this is, again, the biggest point of emphasis I think I see happening right now in B2B is people are really looking at cleaning up that data, structuring the data, controlling it, determining where their source of truth is going to be, and beginning to sort of build their organization around those things.
Perfect. Yeah, moving on to some of these other stats here. We're looking at 2/3 of B2B buyers finding order fulfillment challenging. 41% of all shoppers expect delivery with 24 hours. What technologies or strategies are you seeing as game changers in streamlining that fulfillment?
Yeah, I mean, one of the beautiful things of D2C e-commerce is that it's really about communicating extremely well with the consumer, and that's sort of the standard, right? It's not even a best-in-class outcome. The expectation you have as a customer when you buy on Amazon is, I'm going to go into my Amazon account. It already knows who I am, and maybe even knows my previous purchase history that's showing up on a product that I'm wanting to I've searched for. It says previously purchased on whatever that date is. I add it to cart. I have an expected shipment date. It already knows my name, my preferred shipping addresses. I have my address book available if I want to go someplace else. Has my payment method saved. I can click submit on my order, and then I get my order confirmation email with my expected delivery date. If it's Amazon, which is maybe a little bit of a special case, I can go back to my app and I can check and say, hey, what's my order status? And I've got my nice little graphic that's showing, sort of in transit. When it's out for delivery, I get an email that says it's out for delivery. When it's been delivered, I get an email that says it's been delivered. I get all of these great communication standards. Now, that's sort of D2C e-commerce. The reality is, and I think this kind of ties the 66%, find order fulfillment difficult in B2B and 41% want their order in 24 hours. I think the technology exists in e-commerce to be able to have that great communication with your customer as a B2B merchant, a B2B e-commerce merchant. And so then taking that and adapting that for your business is really a valuable step. Again, same day delivery. I have maybe one B2B customers meaningfully doing that. I have a bunch who, allow for pickup. If you placed your order, you can pick up in person that same day. But there's not many of them that are aiming for a 24-hour delivery. And so what they are doing is strengthening their communication. So, Steve, I'll pick on you. you're my customer, you just purchased, and I'm not going to be shipping for a week or two, maybe a month or two. You're going to know that. You're going to know when I charge the credit card or charge the account. You're going to know, what the sort of particular tracking number is, what freight carrier I'm using, where it's going, when it's expected to arrive. All of that can be automated. Again, I'm not hitting 24 hours, but I'm able to really take what exists already in e-commerce technology and expectations, and then leverage that for my B2B experience.
That makes sense. Okay, so while digital is clearly growing, 38% of millennials still prefer shopping in store.
Mhm.
So how should e-commerce businesses balance that? They have this digital convenience and a physical retail experience for that specific demographic.
Yeah, I think this specific statistic is probably, it's one of those areas where it's good to just understand the difference between a B2C and B2B. Again, by and large, the buyer at our customers is likely working out of an office, full time, 9 to 5, wherever their time zone is, and actually having to get up and go and shop in retail is going to be a problem. If you force them to do that, they might actually find somebody else, go to Amazon Business or something like that to make their purchase the next time. That being said, I do think there is a real valuable category of B2B e-commerce where you have to have that in-store experience. So we work with some brands doing fasteners. We have brands that are doing automotive parts. We have brands that are doing, home contractor supply, right? A real common use case. And so if you have an electrician in a van on the go, they've already left sort of home base for the day, and they've been at a job site and they need to pick up something that they don't have in the truck. They don't want to drive, 2 hours back to whatever their warehouse is. They want to go to your supply house. And that ability to shop your website from the job site, check out, know that it's going to be available for them to pick up. That is a space where that retail connection is really important. And again, take some of the existing D2C best practices. This is, what's my stock level? What's available for pickup today? Which of my locations is available for pickup in? Can I get that order placed as, again, that sort of that guy in the field? Or is there some other approval that's needed? Letting them know all of that before they even, get on the road to go visit you is really critical. And again, you can make the e-commerce experience a lot more streamlined, and your retail operations actually get faster, right? You're no longer sort of having a pile up of people hitting the counter every day, looking to sort of do all of their information discovery and purchasing right then. They can do 90% of it and then show up just to pick up, and you can fulfill that way. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. So yeah, looking at some buyer trends here. Historically, B2B buyers have been slow to adopt these digital channels. So, in your experience, what were the biggest barriers for some of these customers to this digitization? What's finally shifting that behavior?
Yeah, I think a few things. I think one is the bitter taste of projects that didn't go right the first time. I think, there was a lot of pressure a few years ago, I would say even pre-COVID, to get B2B businesses online. I think COVID accelerated some of that pressure, and the technology wasn't there. And so I think there's a little bit of bitterness and some resentment for failed projects that is still sort of present and keeps some B2B brands on the sidelines when they shouldn't be. I think, some of this also comes back to that data layer. Again, if you're working off of 50 different catalogs, and all of them, again, are in different sort of formats and structures, and you're trying to now tie that to a marketing and merchandising sort of objective with an e-commerce store, that can be a real challenge to sort of maintain and curate that data. I think some of it is also just a bit of the retirement of the old guard. It's fun doing discovery calls with the old guard team members at B2B merchants, where they have always done it this way, and hell will freeze over and pigs will fly before they're ever going to see a situation where their sales reps are going to want to actually use a website instead of maybe a tablet with just a locally installed catalog, or that seems so foreign. And so I think, some of those things, organizationally, what we need to overcome is the data challenge, sort of the technical debt issues that exist from prior projects. And then also just showcasing how e-commerce can actually be a streamlined way of doing what's worked, while also introducing some new tools that help along that same front.
Got it. Got it. So looking at some of those tools, with 69% of buyers increasing this online spend in 2024, 70% citing convenience. What are the must-have features or experiences that B2B buyers are expecting?
Yeah, that content is king. I think that's really critical. Make sure you've got your data online, as much of it as you can, that it's optimized and it's consistently presented and available. And it's adjusted for that particular persona, their role at their organization, the size of organization that's working with you, any specific terms that you might have. That's maybe step one. I would say really robust search and filtering is often a necessity as well. One of the challenges with B2B search is that it tends to function a little bit differently than a typical D2C search. So D2C searches can behave as a bit of like a problem solving sort of function. So, if I'm looking for this product that will make me look prettier, it's a little bit more of a discovery search that can happen. B2B search can be highly technical, and you may have multiple answers. So if I'm looking for a particular widget to repair a particular gizmo, and you have 4 different products that potentially could be used to make that particular repair, but they have different SKUs, or maybe they have the same manufacturer SKU or part number. Being able to connect those dots, get the search result to return properly, and then also blend in some of that marketing type discovery content. That's a really big one as well. And then I think, again, just sort of those customer count roles, role-based rules, pricing type of logic. And then also that connection back to make sure you have inventory and fulfillment information available. I think those are some of the big keys there to make the B2B experience much more convenient.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, considering all the options out there, e-commerce and marketplace options specifically, obviously with your experience, your expertise, if you visit Coalition's site, you can see all sorts of case studies. Really, every industry you've been in, there's so many. The search is very helpful. What e-commerce platforms do you recommend, and why? Like, how do you, specifically for B2B, how do you get there when you're working with Shopify, Shopify Plus? You have BigCommerce, Adobe, WooCommerce. Help us understand how you're addressing those.
Yeah, I'd say this is one of the most distinct values that Coalition can bring to the table. We use the phrase platform agnostic, but also opinionated, to sort of describe our positioning as it relates to some of these different technology vendors. What happens, maybe sort of a step back, a lot of agencies and freelancers, they sort of dial in on one particular trending software. So Shopify is sort of the kind of best example here. It's sort of owned the boilerplate recognition in e-commerce for a long time. And so if someone is starting to look at e-commerce platforms, Shopify is going to come up in most conversations, sort of top of mind. And with good reason. It does 90 to 95% of what most e-commerce merchants need it to do. And a lot of agencies, freelancers, consultants, they just are all in on Shopify. And so that they really only understand, the value that Shopify brings and how to approach certain problems inside of Shopify. And so you really want someone, when you're in that discovery and selection phase, who understands and can compare some of the finer points of different platforms for you to help you sort of make that selection. So for us, when we're starting to talk to a merchant, if we had 2 minutes to sort of make a call with you about what platform we'd recommend, we'd mainly look at how you market your product and your business today as sort of one. And then 2 is we look at some of the complexity features for you in terms of your catalog, in terms of your customer, and how you deal with your customers differently based on some parameters. And also the complexity of sort of the finance piece of it. So, how are you charging customers, collecting funds, et cetera? Usually, if you tell me you're more complex in any one of those areas, we'll shift the discussion maybe away from Shopify towards a BigCommerce or towards an Adobe Magento. If you are in a regulated category, so pharmaceutical products, firearms, certain things that again have certain regulations attached to them, again, that might be a needle mover for us away from a Shopify. Certain things might move us, again, closer to a Shopify. WooCommerce, which I see the logo up here on the screen, is a great platform. It's essentially an open source, WordPress connected e-commerce tool. Recommending WooCommerce when you are very publishing driven. So a lot of our clients who are doing healthcare manufacturing and building some products for that space, they have sort of a lot of content built up around each individual product, and publishing it and maintaining that is really important. And so WooCommerce makes more sense for them on the e-commerce side. And they don't use WooCommerce as much for sort of actual order management. They typically will pass that responsibility back to an ERP or something else, because WooCommerce, again, might struggle in that particular area. So again, happy to have that conversation, but basically turn that complexity up. We start to talk about platforms like BigCommerce and Magento, turn it down. Shopify is often going to be a wonderful landing spot. In special use cases, we might look at things like WooCommerce. Maybe the final critique here is that if you're on Salesforce Commerce Cloud, you probably don't need to be. We do work with the platform, but again, we're not sort of a reseller specifically. It just often is much too expensive and much too complicated to really be successful with. So if you're there today, consider migrating unless they just recently signed a contract.
So considering these platforms you are working with, the major players, how customizable are they for these B2B specific needs? Like, specifically those tiered pricing customers, bulk ordering, contract-based pricing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So open source platforms like Adobe Magento tend to offer the most flexibility. And that actually can get you into trouble if no one is there to tell you no about building something or doing it your own way. You tend to remain an outlier even as you onboard to software, which is sort of problematic, right? Software is intended to do the same thing the same way every time and reliably. And so a lot of B2B merchants, they do pick open source platforms or on-premise type solutions or things like Salesforce where they can just kind of customize them endlessly. And that actually is a real big problem because you miss out on sort of the benefits of broader market movements that are happening. You stay out there as sort of a strange, highly unique butterfly type of case, which is actually kind of unhealthy as you sort of think about the way that technology scales. And so again, like we might want to talk to a merchant and understand what's really a necessity and what's just sort of been done the way it's been done because that's how it's been done. And if there is some flexibility there, we start to look at SaaS or software as a service type e-commerce platforms like a Shopify or like a BigCommerce, because they have guardrails. The system is built in some ways to say, here's a better way or a more common way of doing that. And that works well with third-party apps. It works well with data integration. It works well with data transformation. Again, like you can have some flexibility in how you present that and use that internally, but you ultimately are in a safer lane where you can scale with thousands of other businesses instead of sort of functioning like you always have kind of on your own. BigCommerce is probably one that I would highlight for its flexibility. For a long time, they use this phrase open SaaS, which is sort of this concept of being open source, but also being a software as a service. So you get a little bit of the best of both worlds. They're very aggressive in the B2B space. They've open sourced their B2B portal, so it can be attached to even other website and tech stacks, but really has a pretty robust native feature set where you can jump in and you as a B2B business, you're likely to find most of your business requirements already addressed. Shopify is maybe a little more primitive in terms of its B2B space. They've been really investing in upgrading that technology, but today it's going to be a little more limited in some real specific B2B use cases. So with Shopify, a lot of times we might see B2B merchants, especially small and mid-sized ones, wanting to make some slight compromises on how they've traditionally done things to make it work better for e-commerce. But again, not always the case, and something I'm happy to talk about individual merchants with.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so we're just approaching time here. Really wanted to get into just one last question here before we close off here. But looking at is it worth it? What automation strategies have you seen that have really delivered real revenue growth for B2B brands?
Yeah, I mean, OrderEase is up here on the screen rightly, I think. You're a great partner with us. And our partners were also partner agnostic, but also opinionated. And I think speaking to OrderEase here, as a specific area of really enabling yourself as a business to scale through e-commerce, it really does require a fantastic sort of connector that helps with data flow and data transformation where necessary, so that you can have a source of truth, someplace that you can rely upon to sort of help really understand what's happening in the business and in different selling channels. And so I would say automating there is really, really critical. Again, if you can't get quite to that point of having all of your data and all of your information, all of your processes being the same, having an automation tool that helps to consolidate, change what needs to be changed, and adapt what needs to be adapted, so that these different endpoints, your ERP, your e-commerce store, your different sales channels, your marketplaces, those are really fantastic to be able to have this sort of spot where that automation happens. And then again, I think this also sort of speaks to, once you have a lot of this underlying sort of data automation in place, whether that's orders or customer accounts or products and merchandising data, being able to connect out to these different selling channels becomes a spot where automation begins to pay directly for itself, because you are actively selling more products when you're getting that information automatically out to some of these different marketplace and retailers that will sell your product for you.
Great. Thank you for sharing all that knowledge with us, your experiences. I really enjoyed that. Thank you to all the attendees as well for joining here. If you have any questions, I know we're kind of tight for time here now, but please reach out to us. Happy to answer any integration questions, ERP, EDI, e-commerce. Jordan as well, I understand you have a few ways you can help further.
Yeah, absolutely. For B2B merchants, we do a free complimentary discovery for anybody who's attended one of our webinars. And so if you want to start to get into the brass tacks of how you're doing e-commerce today or not, and want to understand how to build the right tech stack, would love to participate there. Or if you're already working with one of our partner solutions, we'd be happy to do more of a marketing focused consultation free. We really make those actionable. So we're not just sort of giving you platitudes, but we're really telling you like, hey, these are next steps that'll make you money and save you pain in e-commerce.
Great. Well, thank you again. I very much enjoyed this. And like I said, if there's any other questions, please reach out to us. We are here to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Take care.